This is a critique of white womanhood and white allyship.
There it is.
To me, that was the clearest thing. That's what was hitting me, at least, watching it. Crazy, stupid podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy, Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
We are literally just coming back from seeing Wicked in theaters.
Just as an FYI, spoilers for Wicked. So just...
Yeah.
If you haven't watched Wicked, don't watch this.
I cried a lot, man. I cried a lot.
I don't really watch musicals, but I was impressed by that.
Beautiful. I've always heard the conversation around Elphaba's casting and how Elphaba should be played by a black woman. She's never been played by a black woman on stage, by the way. And after watching it, I'm like, I honestly, all love and respect to Idina Menzel. Amazing woman, extremely talented, and I know she ate the role up. I've seen and heard her renditions of Defying Gravity. I just honestly do not understand how in all the years of this show's running, because to me the message of the story is magnified so much by having Elphaba be played by a black woman. I feel like that is essential. I honestly don't understand.
Yeah.
Or at least by a woman who is not white. We've had a black Glinda on stage before.
Oh, that's odd, because I feel like you need to make Glinda a white woman.
Me too. I was feeling a lot of ways about Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
She did such a good job.
She ate that role.
She did such a good job. When people talk about Wicked, I always knew like it's a story about racism. Like you're talking about, like there's the interpersonal level that they explore with Elphaba and how she's treated. And then there's also the systemic level that they explore with the animals. I also just think, though, this is a critique of white womanhood and white allyship.
There it is.
That, to me, that was the clearest thing. That's what was hitting me, at least, watching it.
Because there's a few things that Glinda does where I'm like, bruh. One, the name change.
The performative activism.
But it's also performative, but the need to centralize yourself in the moment. Right? The need to not give up any or pass up any opportunity. You could have declined Elphaba's offer to join. That's another thing. You chose to not let everybody know that the hat thing during the party was your idea. And then the last bit, she starts to sing the song with Elphaba at the end. But then when it's time to actually make the decision, she kind of backs out, which, it's echoing very similarly to things that we've experience over the last few weeks.
Yes, I think Elphaba is extremely gracious in her treatment of
Glinda.
I think she gives her a lot of benefit of the doubt. And this is not a critique of Elphaba, because when you're in a situation like that and you are extremely isolated,
right,
and you don't have anybody in your corner, which, side note, who I really want to hate
her
on
sister. Her sister.
Nessa?
You know what's wild? I was waiting for moments like, are you for real? You dead ass not about to say nothing? You for real? Yo, bro, are you for real not about to say nothing?
Nessa, you conniving scoundrel.
I couldn't believe it.
I
could not believe it.
Now, not too much on her, because I think that part of what's going on with her is I think she is also othered and ostracized in a way because of her disability.
Yeah.
It's not the way that they, at least in the film, how they're portraying it is that it's not nearly at the same level. Like it looks different. It takes the form of pity rather than like disgust.
What did they call her? Tragically beautiful or something like that? Yeah.
So I think that is part of what's making her like a little bit hesitant, I think. But I still just, girl. So anyways, going back to Elphaba. When you're in a situation where you are that isolated and you don't have many options of who to lean on, you're not going to be picky. So I think she was very gracious. I believe that Elphaba thinks that Glinda had a genuine change of heart. And that the dance scene was very moving. I was crying a lot. Sure. But I do not think that there's a single thing that Glinda did in this movie that was not self-motivated. I think everything that she did had something to do with herself. Even the dance.
Yeah, she wanted to make herself feel better.
Yes, she felt bad.
Yeah.
She needs to believe that she is a good person.
Right.
And so she does these things so that she can feel that way. But like you're saying, when it comes down to it, to really prove yourself and to actually have to sacrifice something, she's not able to do it.
As somebody that went to a PWI, that right out of college I was working at a PWI, you have to pick your battles and you've got to compartmentalize a lot of things. I think you saw Elphaba do that quite a bit. She does the whole spiel. All right, let's just get off the checklist of things that she knows people are going to ask. But I also think there were a few moments where Elphaba had to ignore a lot of the microaggressions, a lot of the stares, a lot of the jokes and things from someone that may not know her, would assume this is that strong black woman. Like when Fiyero says to Glinda, like, man, you gotta see, I gotta say, at least she doesn't care what people think. And Glinda's like, nah, that's not true. Those things really take a toll. They really hurt. And if you are like a BIPOC person of color, even like a queer person, every day you kind of have to weigh, which battles am I going to choose to have to deal with? Which ones are worth my time? Which ones do I give a pass? And then also realizing that, like, when you're not in that space, understanding that, like, sometimes there's going to be like a grieving period that you have to go through once you're not in it anymore. And those things can feel weird and you're not always sure, like, where the sadness or the anger is really rooted in. But I think that's part of it. You for your own survival, like, you have to choose what you're going to take up too much of your space during that day. Like, I remember previous employment, I mentioned a few examples of things that I experienced. And I remember you were like, that feels kind of racist. And then at the moment I was like, nah, you're bugging. It's like, you're overthinking it. Fast forward a few years later, rethinking it. And again, I'm like, ooh, I think they did a phenomenal job at showing that. Even Elphaba's sister, she had to ignore certain things. Like, she had to choose, like, which passive aggressive compliments am I going to, like, check them for? Which ones am I going to ignore? Taking the small victories. I feel like those two were the only people that kind of understood having to navigate through that throughout the entire film, in my opinion.
You just don't have enough space for all the rage.
Right.
What is that line from Andor? There's that line from Andor where he says something about, like, the tool of oppression is like it overwhelms you. Like, you can't keep up.
Right.
Like, this is like, it's obviously like a smaller scale version of that because it's more interpersonal versus like, I mean, it's interpersonal stemming from systemic things, but you're experiencing it at the interpersonal level. But it feels very similar to that. It's like your mind and your body just honestly cannot sustain.
It's too much.
The emotional cost and weight of having to process and respond to and all of those things. Yeah. And so, yeah, you just kind of, you let things roll off your back. You let things roll off your shoulder. This is also why I feel like I've been in so many situations where things will happen that it's like, okay, like, that is kind of weird. Like, that is kind of problematic. But like me, I'm like, weird, problematic, and bigger fish to fry, right? Like we're saying, like, I cannot hold space for all this rage and anger. So I got to save it for what really matters. But what you see a lot of times from white people with good intentions who want to be allies is that they take those small things and they make them big, and they turn them into these huge outrages, and it's it can be exhausting to watch sometimes. And it's like, you mean well, but baby, this just ain't the fight to fight. I don't know what to tell. It's like, for we
it's interesting. A couple years ago at the university I work at, there was like a conservative group brought in like a guest speaker. You did have a lot of white students that were out there protesting. And I remember going out and looking, and like, you could see a lot of black students that were like, let me get my way to class, like, not taking it that seriously, because in their mind they're like, this how can we allow them on our campus? This is absurd. This is an atrocity. Meanwhile, black people like, this is Tuesday.
Like, this is what it is. I felt a lot of things watching this. Ariana Grande did a great job, but I hated Glinda. I was like, whoa, I could not stand her. Even after her little semi-redemption, I was like,
Yeah. I'm curious to know how this play goes, because part of the author of the book, from what I researched, from what I read about his, inspiration, is like trying to draw an idea of like, what is evil, what makes a person evil, etc. He brought up an example of like when so much of the propaganda out of the U.S. was comparing Saddam Hussein to Hitler as a way of almost sort of like rallying the country. You know, like we're sort of seen as the latter, as like this is the pinnacle of evil. Like you can't really get past that. And so if you're comparing it to that individual, you have to take this seriously, because he talked a lot about the inner conflicts he had, about like how he was able to get so enraged after he sort of what he felt fell through that propaganda. I know that like Elphaba is like supposed to be like an antagonist
in The Wizard of Oz.
Right. Mm-hmm. But this is making it a little bit more complicated. And from what I've read on, you know, more lore and stories about where this goes, adding all of these connections and dots together does complicate it for me a little bit.
It definitely does depend on what the second half does. I do think, yes, Elphaba the Wicked Witch is an antagonist, but she's an antagonist to the wizard and to Glinda, who we know, like we've always known the wizard is a fraud. And now we know Glinda knew he was a fraud. So it kind of like, it ties all of them, like they are all complicit in it. And so sure, she's an antagonist to them, but they are not protagonists.
Right. Okay. There we go. That makes sense. It changes quite a bit. Primarily with Glinda. One, there's like a lot of the lore that like she's like the strongest witch essentially, but like this sort of broke that down of like, one, you're not, and two, you wouldn't even be granted you wouldn't even be granted that title if it wasn't for Elphaba.
There's so much about in the story, just about the way Elphaba is used by everybody. There's nobody in this story really, even truthfully her sister, from what we see, there's nobody in this story that actually just values Elphaba as a human person. It feels like so far there's nobody that we can say with any certainty that actually just values her for her. They value the use that they can get from her. But you think at first Madame Morrible does, right? You know, you think like, oh, she sees something in her, and then when you find out that's not true. She saw something in her, true, but that's all she valued about her. And then same thing with Glinda. What changes Glinda's mind about Elphaba is when Elphaba does something for her. She had been mean the whole time without feeling anything. She didn't care. She didn't care until Elphaba does something kind for her, and then all of a sudden she feels guilty and sees value in this person. And even then, the very first song we get after that is popular. We're just talking about changing her anyways. She's just being used. And yes, like I was thinking about that too with Glinda, like everything that you have is built off of her. First of all, Madame Morrible would have never even spoken to you in the first place. No. If Elphaba had it
sloppy seconds.
You wouldn't be standing in the room with the Wizard of Oz in the first place if Elphaba hadn't brought you along. Your name was not on the invitation, okay? And the only reason why Madame Morrible is going to now go and seemingly mentor you to make you powerful is for the purpose of making you powerful enough to combat Elphaba. It appears that's where we're going.
She's a DEI hire. The biggest beneficiary of affirmative action was a white woman. That's Glinda.
That's a fact.
That's Glinda. Okay.
Oh man.
You weren't even that good at anything. Like when she tries to change
the ball gown.
Oh my gosh. Or even some other things like she tries to throw the ball up and have it spin on her finger. Ball don't even land anywhere near her. Just little things to show just like how
she's incompetent.
Yes.
Yes. She's incompetent.
Her personality and confidence went a long way.
Her personality and her confidence, and then I think from outside viewership, obviously not within the world, but her whiteness. Yeah. She's the perfect pick to be the person for Madame Morrible and the wizard to use to build up as the antithesis to Elphaba, because she has this assumed innocence. As soon as she steps foot anywhere, everybody is like, oh my gosh, Glinda. No matter what she does, no matter what she says, they watch her be mean in real time. Yeah. It doesn't matter because she's assumed good. So if she's doing something, the other person must be deserving of it. You don't know how real. I don't know if when we were having the man versus bear conversation.
Oh God, we're going here. Okay, let's do it.
And this black woman, I wish I could remember the name of the creator. If we post this clip and somebody remembers the name of this creator, please put it. But this black woman creator made a video and was like, I know we're all having a great time with the man versus bear conversation, but white woman, I just want you to know that sometimes black women ask the same question about you. Would you rather work with a white man or a white woman? And a lot of Black women, myself included, say a white man, because combating the assumed innocence and purity of white womanhood in the instances when there is underlying maliciousness as a Black woman is nearly impossible. It is nearly impossible.
And it feels worse than what you already know what you're going to get from a white man to an extent.
It'll be much more upfront. Obviously, there's nice white women. I feel like I should have to say that. But like, obviously, there's a nice, not racist white woman, okay?
Sure.
But there is an underhandedness to white woman racism, especially in the workplace. The way that it shows up, and they're able so often to use their assumed innocence to get away with it. I've told you this before, but when I was in TFA doing our training over the summer, okay, they know that they're sending mostly young white people to work in classrooms that are predominantly students of color. Right. So they do all these trainings with us about anti-racism and microaggressions and all this stuff. We're doing this thing about microaggression, and some of the Black women in the cohort start to speak up about the ways that white women in the cohort have been, and not just white women, honestly, just the white people in the cohort have been committing microaggressions against us on multiple occasions. People who I had met before and had conversations with spoke to me like it was the first time we'd ever met, like shaking my hand. We met already. I'm getting mixed up with other people. There's only 4 of us there. You only have to differentiate between the 4 of us, and we don't look alike, and you're calling me the wrong name. It's crazy. People started speaking up and sharing this.
What did they do? Start crying?
They started to cry, Adrian. They started to cry. Oh my gosh. Because it gets worse. They started to cry. Okay, and now, if you don't know TFA, when you do the training, half of the time you are in these sessions, and then the other half of the time you're teaching in these pairs to summer school, students in summer school. But because these white ladies started to cry right before they're supposed to go back to teach, they didn't make them teach that afternoon. They were too emotional.
They cried their way out of a day off.
They were too emotional, and so their Black partner teachers had to go teach by themselves. Adrian, I'm not making it up. I'm not making it up. Adrian, I'm so serious. This really happened. This really happened.
Wait. Just to recap, y'all express a grievance. They cry, and then you got to work for them afterwards.
That is exactly what happened. Now, luckily, my partner teacher, she really wasn't giving me no problems. Her and I did go back and teach together. But there were other Black women who, in that cohort, that happened, that their partner teachers wouldn't go back to teach because they were too emotional. So all that to say, my stomach. So all that to say, okay, what Glinda represents in this movie, it is something that it irks me to my core. I cannot. I also think with Glinda too, I love that you pointed out the fact that she sang the song with her. That's like just a very small thing that they did that actually says so much. Yeah. I think one of the things that's so frustrating about Glinda, at least where the story has ended in this part 1, and honestly, I think where it's going, because we know how Glinda turns out. I think she still thinks she's doing something good. She still convinces herself in that moment, oh, let me go, I'm not going to go with you, but let me go get you a cloak because you're cold. Let me cover up your shoulders. I think she still thinks like I'm on the right side of history.
Well, do you think this was something I've thought about? She does genuinely care for Elphaba.
It's saviorism.
Well, yes. Yes. But I guess I'm wanting to not lean too heavily in like there was still a relationship, I guess. Yes.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's what saviorism looks like.
Okay, yeah. I
think that's like, I mean, again, I did TFA, okay? Yeah. There's a lot of saviorism involved in these teacher preparation programs. And very well-intentioned people who generally care. They generally care for the communities that they are serving, genuinely.
Yeah.
It's just that they can't undo this idea of their own superiority and their own goodness. And that's Glinda's problem.
Yeah.
At her core, she believes herself to be a person who is superior and better than other people, and that it's her job to use her goodness to the benefit of other people. Like, that's what saviorism is.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so hard to even discuss, because it's like, oh, but they're helping and they're da-da-da-da. And it's yes, but it's the patronizing. It's the assumption that people need you in the way that you think they need you.
Yeah.
She definitely does care about her. It's just she still thinks she's better than her.
It's a reoccurring thing in all of the Wizard of Oz storylines of just like what fascism can look like. And I think the Wicked film did a really good job. Primarily when the Oz says to Elphaba, like, what can really bring everyone together is when you give them a good enemy. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're seeing that right now in our country, and it's a little frightening. I think you're seeing it with immigrants. Mm-hmm. The shift that I've seen, obviously you had Republicans saying some like insane stuff like eating the dogs and cats nonsense, but then you have also seen Democrats shift as well.
The Overton window on immigration politics has shifted to the right
a lot,
because we used to, the conversation used to be about creating a pathway to citizenship.
George Bush was saying that.
Yeah, like that was the conversation.
And the second group are trans people. Mm-hmm. My experience is different, but when I see a lot of people in that community use that G word about their own community, I'm never going to ever tell them to not use that word, because the onslaught of bills that we have seen get passed and the way that they have framed it to protecting kids and protecting women. Now you're starting to see marginalized groups get on board with that. That's scaring me, bro. Flat out terrifying. Cis women that are trying to be on board with this, you're not safe either, because I'm seeing online a bunch of people that are now questioning the gender and sexuality of just cis women. These features don't look as quote unquote feminine to me now.
I think something that I really like about the way they represent it in Wicked, which, like, it should be said, like, Wicked kind of still has that same problem that all the things, because they're literal animals, like,
I know.
Dang. But anyways, putting that to the side, they're literally making them voiceless.
Right.
So, like, they're incapable of being able to advocate for themselves, because they can't, like, physically cannot speak. Like, even when we see Elphaba when they're in the wizard's palace, mm-hmm. and he's like, oh yeah, he was looking at the birds, and so she thinks she's helping him because she thinks he wants to fly. But there's like this little shot where they show his face looking at the wizard, and it kind of gives the implication that, like, he's like, what is he talking about?
Right.
You know? So she does this whole thing, and it's horrible to watch, but also it's like they probably didn't want it in the first place, but they're incapable of speaking up for themselves. Like, they cannot, there's nothing they can do. They choose to vilify people in similar circumstances. Like, when we're talking about immigrants, and specifically people who don't have, like, legal documentation to be here, that is a group of people that, like, they don't have a huge public presence, mm-hmm. because it's probably not safe.
Right.
They can't advocate for themselves, and also we are not very knowledgeable, mm-hmm. on who they are and what their experience is. It's the same thing with trans people. The reason why so many people are so susceptible to the propaganda about trans people is because people don't understand trans identity. People don't have information.
Right.
And so they're very susceptible to misinformation and disinformation because they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And that's like another form of voicelessness. It's like if you don't have a lot of representation and people don't have a lot of understanding on your community and who you are, then it's very easy for you to be dehumanized.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was just kind of frightening was just like the way that I think fascism can sometimes look. Like the idea of like gentrification, like that's also another version, a layer of how fascism sort of plays out. Like when they talk about this idea of like the animals sort of being like voiceless, when Elphaba sort of, loses control of her power at the beginning when she first gets to the school, some of the mm-hmm. building breaks down and you see pictures of animals that I'm assuming were in like higher leadership positions. And then when she's talking to her professor, same thing. And then you realize like, oh, this is slowly deteriorating. Like some other things that is like when they go to that party, animals are still present, but their involvement in that space is reduced to like serving them drinks.
Or the performers.
They're performing. Mm-hmm. They're the ones cleaning up the space or playing the music. The voice, not just in like they can't speak, but the voice is in like, well, we don't have any power anymore. We don't have any capital anymore. People forget about that component of how fascism looks. Like the
erasure.
Yes. That was a bit of a pivot. This is our post-election, I don't know, processing.
Wicked brought all of this up. This is the
It's
power.
all Ariana Grande's fault. This
is the power of Broadway.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. We'll go with that. That works.
Those ladies can really sing.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Satya?
Oh, yeah.
Not that we didn't know, but
Just proven time and time again.
woo, so good. So good. Also, the other thing I would like to say, all these live action, stop it. We need more Broadway adaptations. That's what we need.
I can get on board with that.
Because not everybody can go to not everybody can see them.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. Make them into movies
Like,
that we
not
can
everyone
watch
lives in
them.
New York or Chicago. Right?
Yeah, even if
LA.
when they go on tour, they go everywhere. But like, it's still hard. It costs money. Not everybody has access to get to see them. Make some more of these.
I could get on board
Mean
with
Girls
that.
was fun. I just feel like we could. The Dreamgirls movie, classic.
And I think the success you're seeing from some of these over the last few years kind of points at like Hollywood might be missing out on like a hidden opportunity to make like quite a bit of money.
Yeah, I don't think there's any that I can think of that were like that was bad. Like Les Mis, phenomenal.
And they're very immersive too.
Yes.
They will keep you captivated and grounded.
Yes. Now, don't let it take the place of stage plays.
Yeah.
Okay, we still need the Broadway. Okay, we still need it. But I wouldn't mind more of these. I like them.
Well, those are our thoughts about Wicked. We appreciate you all for tuning in. Loved all the thoughts you guys gave us in relation to Arcane, by the way. That was really fun.
Those conversations have been a good vibe.
Yeah, for Arcane, for House of the Dragon, for Interview with the Vampire. Love the community that we're kind of building here with you guys. It's been kind of fun. But yeah, let us know what you guys thought about Wicked, about any of the things that we talked about, questions that you might have for us. We'd love to answer those. But with that, yeah, we want to thank you all again for tuning in, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everyone. Peace.